Okay, let's start this live show. It is, what is today? Today is November 10th of 2025. It is the 50th anniversary of the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald. I will get into that before we are done tonight, hopefully if I have time. But a very famous song everybody knows, other than maybe the Titanic. The Edmund Fitzgerald probably is maybe the second most well-known ship because of the song that came out a few years later by Gordon Lightfoot, who is spectacular. This 50 years ago. Like I said, if I have time, I'll get into that before we are done tonight. But I do have a fantastic show set up for you tonight. I always try to work really hard in bringing you interesting news, interesting information, stories that catch my eye. And we do have, or I have, a lot to talk about tonight. I hope you will be there in the comments. I hope you will be posting, commenting on what I have to say tonight. I think you're going to find it very, very interesting. As it says, I want to talk about the disappearance of Katie Eggleston. That's a disappearance from Portland, Oregon, which occurred over 30 years ago. That is the disappearance that I've picked out for this week. As you know, I've been picking out just random disappearances that catch my eye to comment. Last week, of course, it was Courtney Stoffer. And you should know I am trying to reach out to somebody in her family. There's a Facebook page, etc. Maybe we might be able to cover her disappearance as an episode if I can reach somebody who was around at the time and knew Courtney well, friend or family. Trying to do that. But Katie Eggleston caught my eye not long after last week's live show. And in fact, I'm sitting here and I can't remember what caught my eye and then deciding to feature her tonight. Certainly have known about her disappearance for a while, but I have to admit, I've not thought about it. I know I've never reached out to anybody in her family, but we'll get into that before we are done tonight. I want to look at Katie Eggleston's. I think the reason I chose to feature her disappearance tonight, fairly rare kind of disappearance. I'll get into that. Also, of course, I have to talk about this UPS jet that crashed while taking off. Can't even say after takeoff. While taking off in Louisville, Kentucky. I've been following that very closely. You all know that when it comes to plane crashes, I take an interest in those for some reason. That goes back just about as far as me taking an interest in disappearances. Not only have I become a Rolodex for disappearances, but I'm also Rolodex when it comes to plane crashes. This goes with my mind. So I really want to talk about that. If you've been following it, if you haven't been following it, there's certainly some things that need to be said. What you need to be looking out for in the coming weeks and months as news comes out, and looking back at what happened and what we know to this point, and kind of doing it from a layperson point of view. I'm not an engineer. And then also I am going to shortly discuss an update on the disappearance of a boy. He was featured on an Unfound now going back to when, 2021, 2022. Michael Vaughn, Mikey Vaughn, who was his parents were, he was left with a family member. They left, he came back, he was gone. And there is some updates on that. And so that is what I'm guaranteed to get to tonight, and don't want to make any promises outside of that. I'll look, like I said, maybe I'll get to Edmund Fitzgerald and some other things. We'll see how much time we have at the end. Let's see who's in here, and then I will continue. Hello, Charlie. Good to see you. I think I'm going to be seeing your mother for Thanksgiving in a couple weeks. And like I said, like, share, subscribe, as I've posted there before the show started tonight. Lisa, greetings and salutations. My Unfound fan friends, it's a beautiful but freezing night in Kansas City. Yeah, you're a Chiefs, Lisa. Your Chiefs having some issues, only 5-4. Tech, how are you? Who's a Fell? How are you? Good to see you. Love that song, Edmund Fitzgerald. Yeah, a bit outside of my genre. It kind of is, Lisa, but it's not really country music. It's like a little folksy, but I'm a big Gordon Lightfoot fan. His voice and everything, just sundown, you better take care. You know, that whole stuff, just fantastic. And I was raised on his music. My parents had his greatest hits or something on 8-track. And we used to listen to that all the time back mid 70s, late 70s. So I know a lot of his music that way. It's one of the few musical tastes my parents had that I liked. Yeah, there we go. Charlie, what is a flat baby? Yeah, that's a good question, Lisa. Hello, fishing. What's going on? Audio is good, but freezing up at times. Don't know what to say about that. Who's a Fell? Things are looking good right now, but I will admit it's been the weather has not been the greatest the last couple days. And what I've noticed in this building is when it's windy, the internet connection is not as good. So that could have, why that is, no idea. But it could have something to that because the wind is really blowing out there. Maybe like 40 miles an hour or something. We have this cold front. It's going to get down like into the 40s the next couple days. So I'm putting it in quotations. Cold front coming through. Could have something to do with it. Not sure. You could never imagine the accomplishments Les used to spend all Saturday researching it. I'm going to try to get to that, Lisa, before we're done. We'll see. Yeah, it's Brian. It's Brian. Who's a Fell? All right. All right. Hello, Brian. Good to see you. I know a lot of Brians. Is it brother Brian? What kind of Brian are we talking about here? I'm Who's a Fell. All right. And Mary Jane, what's going on? I'm Everything 2020. Not sure why it says my channel name. Yeah, something weird has been going on with we noticed that yesterday as well of everything that for the think tank that I don't know what's going on. YouTube, you have to understand something. I realize all of you use YouTube to watch videos or whatever. You probably don't realize these things, but as a person who does a YouTube show, of course, I put episodes on here and everything else. I have a channel and everything. It's amazing how many things they change and you don't get any warning. No updates, no emails, no, hey, watch for this. It's just one day, one way, one day, and then the next day it's something different. So I don't know. I guess they kind of do that with Facebook and everything else. They just, but Facebook, I've seen that as well. I don't know. So I don't know why people's names are different here. Regular Brian, my YouTube name changed when we're deleting some things. Okay. All right, good to see you, Brian. Text, everything says it's YouTube, probably. But as you are watching tonight, as I've already posted in there, please subscribe, please like, please share. There are a multitude of ways you can support this podcast. Patreon, PayPal. Hit the join button below if you're watching on YouTube. If you'd like to contribute while the live show is happening, hit the super chat button down there at the bottom below the chat It's available on some apps, not all apps. You'll just have to check your own. It may depend on you have an updated iPhone or Android phone or your tablet or whatever else. But most people will be able to find the super chat button down below the chat. So what has been going on with me since we last got together? Of course, the last time we got together, I was just getting over a trip with my two brothers. You should know my brother Michael went back to Pennsylvania Tuesday night. He got back safely, and then he actually went up and saw my dad. Not his dad, but my dad, even though Michael and I are brothers. Some of you know that story. He went up and saw my dad on Saturday 2 days ago, and they watched a football game on the computer together. So they got together for the afternoon. That was nice. Brother Michael lives maybe 40 minutes from where my dad lives. So they had a nice afternoon together. But what has gone on with me mainly since last Monday is I kind of got sick for a few days, and I feel fine, but I can still tell, I could tell that I was sick within the last few days. It really started on Thursday. Of course, many of you tuned in to see me on Dr. Telesco's show. I could tell something wasn't right on Thursday. I felt, even though I slept fine, I felt good at trivia on Wednesday night, slept fine. But when I woke up Thursday, I didn't feel sick. It just felt like I didn't sleep that much, even though I did. And so I really, really had to pump myself up for Dr. Telesco's show on Thursday to have the proper energy. And then going into Friday, when I woke up, I was like, oh, yeah. Not horrible, but I had sinus stuff going on in here. I didn't have a sore throat, but the top of the back of my throat was kind of sore, and I was just kind of like, run down. And so that continued through Friday. Started feeling a little better on Saturday, felt a little better Sunday, yesterday. And today I'm okay. I'm still not 100%, maybe 90%. Still got like a little bit of a dry cough going on, but fortunately, this whole pain right in this part of my face, if I was a superhero, where I would wear my mask, was kind of sore, and I think very well could have been a virus or something, but I know how I am. Like I've said, the weather has really been changing. Last week, really hot, and it's been steadily getting cooler and cooler and cooler to the point, like I said, it's going to be in the 40s. My sinuses, I know a lot of people's sinuses are like that. My sinuses don't like that, at all. And then on top of that, you get the wind going, you get the dust being flown around and everything else. Then there's allergies that kick in and everything. But it felt okay today. Not 100%. But so didn't get much done on Friday and Saturday. I did do my writing for Patreon for the blog and everything. But really, I just kind of lazed around, to be honest. So I was a bit sick. But like I said, I felt pretty fine today. Did not have any lulls or feeling tired today or anything. And I'm feeling, maybe you can hear something in my voice a little bit, but that's about it. As far as trivia last Wednesday, the trivia team that I'm playing on now, we were first going to the final question. But once again, we had no courage on the final question, unfortunately. And let's see if I can remember what the question was. What was the question? I can't think of it right now. If I think of it, I'll just jump in here with it. But I'm not. What was it? Man, I cannot remember, unfortunately. The thing, though, the disgusting part was, Oh, I know what it was. Now I know. No. Face the Devil is the final stage of what TV game show? Face the Devil is the final stage of what TV game show? Don't cheat. Don't cheat. Don't look it up. Put it in the comments. See if you can get it right. Face the Devil is the final stage, like the final round of what game show? And like I said, knew it. I thought I knew it. I ended up being right, but didn't have full confidence, so we didn't bet any points. And so we didn't get it right. So you can try to get that right. Tech, I'm just going to call you. I know everything. I'm just going to call you Tech just because that's what's on there. So everybody's like, who's he talking about if everybody's looking in the chat? Tech, my vocals are going well. The big issue I'm having with my vocal coach, who is spectacular, is I really, really have to learn how to what they call sing into the mask. It's funny, I was just mentioning that Halloween mask just a couple minutes ago. I have to more learn how to sing into the mask. Right now, I'm still too much of what you would call a throat singer, where the sound and everything is moved toward the back of my throat. And although there's certain singing that can be done that way, certain styles of singing, and certainly if you want to sound a particular way, you can do that. But if you're looking to be a rock and roll singer or heavy metal singer, or if you want to sing music like from Def Leppard or Tesla or Whitesnake or groups like that, Dio, then you have to learn how to what they call sing into the mask, which means you really have to learn how to push the resonance of your voice to the front of your face into this area right in here. Right in here. And it's a lot of reasons why if you hear a lot of singers, you know, of a variety of, even you could go anywhere from Celine Dion to Sebastian Bach. Of course, Sebastian Bach, Skid Row, you know, so we all know who Celine Dion is as well. Even though they sing different genres of music, and they just both coincidentally happen to be Canadian. And my teacher is Canadian, by the way, as well. They are really known for singing into the mask, and it's kind of that little bit nasally sound that you get. Now, of course, there are singers like maybe like Dennis DeYoung from Styx. He's not with Styx anymore, but you know, Come Sail Away, song by, he sings that. If you listen to him, he's very nasally, very nasally. That is called singing into the mask. Now, I don't want to sound like that. You don't have to sound like that. But what you certainly have to do is get away from the sound being in like back of the throat, because that's hard on your larynx. It really causes you to use your neck muscles way more than you should. In fact, you shouldn't use your neck muscles at all. But pushing, you know, the resonance and getting that sound and that kind of sound you're looking for to resonate up at the front of your face. Not easy, not natural. And, but that's the only way to do it. And in fact, if you do sing that way, you know, you don't have to sound nasally necessarily, but that's a better way to relax your throat muscles. It's easier on your vocal cords. Your larynx is going to be more, neutral or looser and everything else. It just doesn't come very naturally to people. And the reason you see a lot of professional singers having voice problems, that's probably one of the reasons. Because, you know, just like anything in life, there are teachers out there who know what they're talking about and teachers who don't. And there's a variety of ways to teach singing. and you can get away with singing in a proper way for a while, but then it will come back to bite you. No different than if you're lifting weights or playing golf or something like that. You can have improper technique and get away with it for a while until you can't. And then maybe you're going to pull a muscle, or you're going to find a limitation on how much weight you can lift or how accurate you are hitting a ball. This is what that's like. You can sing from the back of your throat. And if you're just going to do karaoke, one song here and there, you can probably get away with that. But over the long term, if you want to sing for a couple hours straight, you're probably not going to be able to do that. And so when you maybe hear like singers like Adele, very famous singer Adele, she's had a lot of voice problems. That's probably one of the reasons, is even though she's a great singer and everything, not using the proper technique. So that's kind of what's going on with me. It's not that big of a deal, but I will tell you that the last lesson I had on Friday, even though I was kind of down, kind of run down and everything, and I told my teacher that's basically all we worked on Friday. Singing into what they call the mask, making sure you feel the vibrations up right above your teeth, up here into the bridge of your nose, up into your nasal cavity when you're doing, scales and things like that. So that's how my singing is going. My voice is fine. But that is something that's not coming naturally to me. But if I want to do the singing that I want to do, it's an imperative. Because like I said before, Celine Dion never had any voice issues. She's singing into the mask. Sebastian Bach still kind of can get it done these days, even after his crazy life. Singing into the mask, that's where a little bit of that nasally sound, especially in the upper range, he has very high upper range, that's where it comes from. And I want to try to be able to do that. And if it were easy, everybody would be able to do it. So that's where I am right now. The flu is going around. Is it? I have no idea. Lisa says, such a great Dr. Telesco show. Yeah, absolutely. Lisa says kids have been sick, not horribly, but a couple of urgent care visits. Oh my goodness. No whammies. People are guessing no whammies. No, not the whammies. No, not that one, Brian. Face the devil, no idea. Press your luck, no. Although that was one of the answers, no. Thank you, Tech. Love Sebastian Bach. You've got me trying to sing Neil Young, Old Man, into the mask right now. Okay. Anybody want to take another guess at the trivia question? What TV game show's final stage is called Face the Devil? I'll take... until we're at 9:23, I'll take guesses until 9:30, and then I will tell you the answer. One more thing before I get into all the true crime stuff. This is kind of true crime. I got my chair back. Some of you maybe a month ago might remember that I had a chair. By the way, all of my porch furniture continues to be out on the landing by the elevators. And you might remember, like I said, a month ago, a chair that I had out there went missing. It was like a mystery. Went down to talk to the security guy, on and on and on. I found out that the people who own this condo took that chair away. Well, that chair is mine. They returned it this past weekend. I didn't meet them. I was here all day. Like I said, I haven't been feeling very good. And then I opened my door. Was it Saturday? And there the chair was. So once again, they were here. Didn't even bother to knock on the door. I don't know. But I got my chair back. So that's nice. So, Lisa says the one where they eat scary things game show. No, that's that Dare show. No, Lisa, not that. So once again, what is the final stage? What is the game show that the final stage is called Face the Devil? All right. So that's really what's been going on with me. Since we all got together, these weeks go by so fast. I can't even begin to explain where all the time goes. All right, let's get into the true crime stuff for the next hour and 35 minutes. And by the way, when it comes back to my singing, that is actually, I'm not joking around. That is, if some of you are new to me talking about this, I've been taking singing lessons since April, although I was trying to do it on my own for quite a while, which probably in retrospect was not the greatest of ideas. I've been taking almost weekly, hour-long singing lessons since about April. And how are they going? I don't know. I don't know what to compare it to. Certainly, I'm a better singer than I started back in April, but the singing that I want to be able to do is some of the most difficult singing that can be done in any genre of music anywhere. And that is your basic heavy metal, hard rock type of singing. Of course, very high in the male range. We're getting up, the C above middle C on a piano, which is C5, going up way above that, and having endurance and good volume and all of that. And this all started because I just woke up one day a couple years ago. I've been listening to this music all my life and I can't sing it. Why is that? And I was like, I think I'm going to try to figure out if I can actually do this or not. Luckily, I have a music background. I think that helps. But I just woke up one day and said, I'm going to try to do this. And I thought I was making pretty good progress. And so I started taking lessons from Jacqueline. And she's a great teacher, but, I developed some bad habits and some things. And so we're still working on things, as I just explained. I think it's going to happen. I just got to be patient. The big thing right now is when I'm not having my lessons with her, am I practicing correctly? And that seems to be an issue with me. And of course, on top of everything else, I'm not the most patient person. But that's what I'm trying to do. Started like what was it? I was about 53 when I started this. And here I'm at 55, closer to the goal, but still have a ways to go. And I know some of, when are you going to sing for us? I'll sing for all of you when I'm darn ready. I'm not going to get on here and stink. Certainly a better singer than I was, but certainly not ready to put anything that's going to be on the internet forever. All right. So it's all in the plan. Let's get to tonight's show. And I am going to start right there with Katie Eggleston. I'm going to read to you, as I have done, I'm going to read to you most, not all, but most of the page on the Charlie Project. I have gone and read some articles about her disappearance on newspapers.com. I was pointed to a YouTube video that was done a few years ago. Must have been done around COVID time regarding her disappearance. A guy actually in Portland kind of walking around this area where she went missing. Watched that. It was about an hour and some minutes. I watched that. And I'm going to go through it. There are, as I usually have done, I'm going to ask some questions that are still kind of in my mind. And then I'm going to do some analysis of this, because this is a disappearance from 1993. It happened the day after my birthday. It was August 2nd, 1993. Of course, my birthday is August 1st. And what's really weird is I actually remember my birthday, August 1st, 1993. The reason I remember it is coincidentally, I won a drag racing competition at Keystone Raceway in New Alexandria, Pennsylvania on my birthday in 1993. True story. Won the whole thing. And this happened the day after that. Crazy. All right, I'm going to read this. And Rockford, one of my pet cases. Let's have it. Yeah, you and I have been going back and forth about that, Rockford. All right, Katie Eggleston. Eggleston, if you want to look it up. Eggleston was last seen in Portland, Oregon on August 2nd of 1993. She left her job selling long-distance services for AllNet Communication Services Incorporated in Lake Oswego, Oregon. It was her first day on the job alone. That morning, she attended an AllNet meeting and made sales calls at businesses on Northeast Whitaker Way and stopped at a bank, a gasoline station, and a Burger King restaurant near Lloyd Center. That afternoon, Eggleston, Katie, made calls in the then Port of Portland building in the 700 block of Northeast Multnomah Street. It's not called the Port of Portland building now. The building is there. It's not called that anymore, though. 5 witnesses at the building stated she looked, quote unquote, worried and preoccupied. I'll come back to that. At 2:15 p.m., a man to whom Eggleston had just made a sale saw her get off the building's elevator in the company of a man wearing a blue blazer. So blue, like business jacket or formal jacket. You know, one of those things I never wear anymore. He is described as having dark hair and a dark complexion. Eggleston has never been heard from again, and the man she was last seen with has never been identified. Shortly before 5 p.m., so 2 hours and 45 minutes later after this sighting, a witness noticed a silver/gray Volkswagen Golf similar to Eggleston's parked in the Port of Portland parking lot. Eggleston's supervisor was scheduled to meet her at that time of 5 p.m. in Lake Oswego, but she never arrived for the meeting. Eggleston's car was eventually found by a security guard at about 12:30 a.m. on August 3rd. So let's just say approximately 10 hours after she was seen at the building. The day after she was last seen, the vehicle was in the parking lot of an industrial complex in the 12,000 block of Northeast Airport Way. The site is 9 miles from the Port of Portland building. And I have looked this up on a map. The vehicle was unlocked. Its windows were rolled down. Now, a Golf would have 2 windows that are, I think it's a 2-door. It's like a Rabbit, I think, type of, I think of Volkswagen Rabbits, but I think they did change the name to Golf, Golf. So it's a 2-door. So both the passenger and driver's side windows were rolled down. The keys were in the ignition. Eggleston's purse and its contents were in the front seat, and her workout clothes were in the back seat. But her AllNet binder was missing. There were no indications that a struggle had taken place. So just to put this in a nice little nutshell, she's at this building, 2:15 p.m. She's supposed to meet her boss 2 hours and 45 minutes later in a different city. She doesn't make it there. Everybody's like, well, what's going on? And then her car is eventually found 9 miles away in this industrial park. Now, you should know, importantly, that this industrial park is right along the Columbia River, which goes through Portland. It's just I'm not saying you have to think anything, but I have to mention it if you're going to go check this out for yourself. Now, what we need to, I think, understand right away is, at least from a circumstances point of view, and keep in mind, I've not spoken to anybody in her family. May do that, may attempt to do that. And she does have some siblings. I think her parents are now deceased, but she does have some siblings. But this is from a circumstances point of view, and I don't know anything about Katie. Certainly read a lot about her, but as you know, a lot of times with these news stories, they put the best spin on things. I haven't read anything that she was having any emotional problems. I did read where she had broken up maybe with her boyfriend like the weekend before. Maybe that's something. But, there was nothing along the lines of, well, she has mental health issues. She has depression issues. I couldn't see anything like that in the public material. But as I've stated, a lot of times we don't find out about these things until we have a guest on the program, and then you find out things about the missing person that have never been said before. That's very common. I think it's very important to the work that I do. So we can't look at this necessarily from a, disappearances are all about people, not circumstances, because really we're getting what I would say is a very 2D, two-dimensional version of Katie. So we have to kind of look at this for now from a circumstances point of view. And what I'm here to tell you is this is a fairly rare from a circumstances point of view. Daytime, professional young woman in a big city with other people around, that she goes missing under those circumstances certainly can happen, certainly has happened. But this would be in contrast to, her being at night by herself, walking the streets. Maybe we could even think about, of course, we know I keep bringing up that jogger who got attacked at like 6 a.m. What was it, in Louisville, Nashville, Memphis, somewhere, one of those cities. This is not that. She was in a location where she was supposed to be. It's not clear to me that a lot of people would have known she was going to be at that building that day, except for the people who had meetings with her that day. Maybe she was scheduled to stop in. I don't know exactly how this job worked. Did she just randomly stop in? Did she had scheduled meetings where she had to go? I don't know. I know I was a field consultant for 10 months with 7-Eleven, which sounds maybe generally similar to this. I never had any scheduled meetings. I just kind of showed up at the stores to see what the heck was going on. So that is somewhat unclear to me, but it does seem to be not too many people could have known she was going to be in the building that day. All right. What I think we also have to understand, as I learned in this video that I watched, that this building did not have what we would call a parking garage. A lot of city buildings have a parking garage like underneath, or maybe the first couple floors are a parking garage, and then the office are on top of that. This is not like that. The parking lot that her car would have been in was like across the street. It was like at street level. Of course, we know that parking garages can be kind of cavernous. And we do know that women sometimes going out to the cars, there are men, rapists, stalkers waiting for them. A lot of places to hide in a parking garage. This was not that kind of situation. Seemingly, her car was parked across the street in this parking lot in the daytime. Lots of people around. I think this is important. Okay. Now, we have to remember also this is 1993. And there's nothing that I have seen that says anything about video. This is a business building. You would think that there would have been 1 or 2 cameras at the time. You would think. But I couldn't find anything anywhere that says anything about video. That police checked it or they didn't get to it in time or anything along those lines. So if you're wondering about that, I don't have a good answer for you. So regarding the sighting of her with this guy, we don't have that in video. You'd think you would. Now, if this, of course, was a disappearance that occurred in 1975, then we would have no expectations in that area. By 1993, it seems like a building like that would have something like that. But if it did and they didn't get it, that is a huge oversight. Also, we have to remember that the car was found. This is not a disappearance where the car is still missing or was missing for like a year. Nothing about forensics done. Probably, I would say, probably not done. Even today, we know, for example, like Tom Brown's Durango and all these other vehicles that have been found that have connected to disappearances and Unfound is featured. We know that forensics are rarely done. In fact, most of the time, the cars are given to the family or whoever very quickly, and nothing's done. Mistakes, probably. But there's nothing that I could find, her car being found, that any forensics were done on it. Fingerprints, Nothing. And we have to remember this is kind of just on the edge of the DNA era, and probably certainly nothing like that was collected. Now, what also occurs to me in reading this is, well, all right, so she had 2:15. This meeting ended at 2:15. She wasn't supposed to meet her boss till 5. I would admit I did not do a map to see where Lake Oswego is compared to where she was. Does it take 2.5 hours to drive to Lake Oswego from Portland? I don't know. But if it doesn't, let's just say it only takes an hour. Well, how was she going to be filling up that? Did she have other appointments that she missed? Or were there other places she was supposed to go? I don't know. Now, if you're going to tell me it's a 2.5 hour drive, then I guess we can just jump to the conclusion, well, she was going to get in her car and drive immediately to this meeting that she was supposed to have at 5. But if you're going to tell me that it only takes like an hour and a half, then I'm going to start thinking that, what was her plan? Because she had those workout clothes, was she planning to work out and then go to the meeting? That seems unlikely, probably after. So this is something that's also in my mind. Also, something that came up is that not long before she went missing, she had gotten her passport. Was it at her parents' house or something? But even though her purse and other items were found, her passport, as best as I can tell, is still missing. So I don't know if she was living by herself by that time, but she had gotten her passport. I have my passport, even though I've never had to use it. I don't think. Maybe I did use it once or twice over the years. I've had it for over 20 years. Of course, you update them. But her passport is missing, even though her purse is not. It seems like her driver's license and everything were in her purse. But this passport that she went to get at her parents' house or whatever, I think that is missing. Is that important? I don't know. Maybe it was found and the police don't know about it. I don't know. Now, you should also know what's interesting to me is this is the first time she had been out for this job on her own. She was new to this job, but until like the weeks before, she has, she had, I guess, been maybe being, all right, she gets hired for this job. And so she has like a mentor, a supervisor. All right, here's where we're going to be going. I'm going to introduce you to these people. And this was the first day where she was out on this job by herself. So is that a coincidence, or is there some causation and correlation there? You can think about that. But it would lead me to believe that she had been in this building before. If she had been with whoever this person was showing the ropes, it's very possible she had been in this building before with that job. Maybe. Once again, nothing has been said either way about that I saw. But it's important to note she may have been in this building before. In fact, maybe she was in this building before and she didn't even have that job yet. I don't know. And also, it might be interesting to know, did she know anybody in the building besides whoever she was going to be doing business with? Did one of her friends from college or somebody, work in the building as well? Once again, nothing out there about this, just something that's on my mind that's not mentioned anywhere. And so those are the things that to me would all help understand this disappearance a little better. Did they actually check for video? Were forensics done? We need more information, I think, about this passport. And I'm now seeing that some people, MT and Rockford, have checked this. Thank you so much for taking time to do that. So 20 to 30 minute drive, Lake Oswego to Portland. All right. So 2:15, that leaves a lot of time outstanding. And what we don't know is, how was she going to fill up that time? And there's nothing, once again, that I could find that she missed other appointments until the 5 o'clock appointment she was supposed to be having with her supervisor. So what was she going to do with that extra time? Was she just going to drive to the headquarters there, whatever, just hang out? I guess it's possible, but maybe not. Lake Oswego, fairly close. Thank you. Passport likely for I-9 employment proof of citizenship purposes. That's certainly true. Could have been used for that, but it's still outstanding as to, well, then what happened to that passport? Could it have been missed somewhere? Could she have given it to her employer to check that all out and was never given back? I don't know. Maybe the police have it and haven't told anybody. Don't know. All right. So here is my analysis. Here are the things. Now you should know, maybe I should state this also. They took a look at a particular guy who was a serial killer. His name was John Courtney, because seemingly he had killed some other women kind of in the same demographic as Katie up in that region of the United States. But as reading as much as I could see on this, not likely. The police, in my opinion, this guy, John Courtney, they looked at him and for the most part have dismissed him. In addition, I think they looked at the guy who she was dating, and I think that originally he was like somebody they thought who could be responsible, but then they found out that he was like in the middle of Oregon when all this happened. He was nowhere near Portland when this happened. And keep in mind, like I said, they seemingly broke up not long before this all happened. So if you're wondering about, well, suspects, John Courtney, the ex-boyfriend, seemingly both of them have been ruled out. Now, the first thing in reading all of this, what caught my eye was this, and I realize there can be an explanation. I realize that physically there could be a very simple explanation. It's just that just because it's physically possible, it just doesn't seem very likely. My question is, all right, just to go back, and I've read this in multiple places, so I guess it's true. To read this paragraph again, at 2:15 p.m., a man to whom Eggleston had just made a sale saw her get off the building's elevator in the company of a man wearing a blue blazer. What I can't understand is if she just made a sale to this guy, how did he get to the bottom floor before she did? Now, I realize it very well may be, well, the deal was over and she had to go to the bathroom and then he went downstairs and then she comes down and then he sees her. Certainly possible. It just doesn't seem very likely. Now, of course, we know these buildings, they all have restrooms on their particular floors, and it's certainly possible. But it is weird to me that it seems this guy is the only one who saw her in the lobby. Now, I don't know how busy it's 2 p.m. in downtown Portland, and he's the main witness. Now, I realize maybe he's the main witness because he knew her. But I'm also thinking that did they not, it just gives the impression that he was the only person who saw her. What are the odds of that? What are the odds that the guy that she had a meeting with is the only person to see her downstairs in the lobby as she leaves? It seems unlikely. Certainly physically possible. It does not defy the laws of physics. It's not like he had to travel faster than the speed of light or travel back in time or anything like that. It just, the way it is explained here seems unlikely. So I would want if this guy is still alive, I think that I would want that to be explained to me a little better. So, all right, you two had this meeting, and nobody denies that. How was it that you got down to the lobby before she did? Now, keep in mind, he's the one that has the office there. If he has to go to the bathroom, he's just going there. Now, what was going on down the lobby? My experience with this kind of stuff is that, it's 2:15 in the afternoon. What's he doing down there? If it was lunchtime, I get it. It's 2:15 in the afternoon. What is he doing down there? Hard to understand. Certainly could be explained. It just seems unlikely. What I would also say is that, of course, as you would expect, this dark-haired guy with a dark complexion has never been identified. Seemingly the only time this guy was ever in that building was on the day that she went missing. And certainly if it's a guy who is a rapist, stalker, certainly possible. But what's he doing? Walking around public buildings, looking for women by themselves? That doesn't seem like a good plan. If you're that type of guy, it seems like a weak plan to go about things that way. Now, what also is weird to me is that, once again, going back to this guy who had a meeting with her, although it's not necessarily written this way in the Charlie Project, I did find other accounts of this where it says that this guy thought that Katie and this guy were together. So when he saw them get off the elevator, he was of the impression that the two knew each other and they were together. Well, he just had a meeting with her. Would he not know if she was with somebody else or not? You would think. So if you think that I'm suspicious of this guy who had the meeting with her, I will tell you, yes. Can it all be explained away? Yes. But I also know, on the other hand, that for criminals, they generate stories to make it look like somebody else did it. I didn't do it. I saw some other guy with the woman who disappeared. And this is the description of that guy. So this is something that really, really sticks out to me. I'm guessing in the police records, they have the name of this guy who met her at 2:15. Certainly, I don't know what this guy's name is, but I'd certainly like to know what he did with his life over the last 30 years. Certainly might be interesting to me. Who is he? Kind of stuff like that. Because my impression is that the story is just a little too perfect. We all know about this. We are always highly suspicious of these stories that kind of just are a little too perfect. Well, what do you know? We have this guy who just happened to see her walk away with some other guy. How convenient. Of course, it happens. So this is something that's on my mind. In fact, I will tell you that it's so much on my mind that I actually emailed the Portland Police Department yesterday about it and explained my reason. I told them who I was, my credentials, about the podcast, about speaking at schools and the database and everything. And I said, I just asked them, this whole thing, and I went through the explanation. My experience of 390 disappearances, this explanation just seems a little too perfect to me. How convenient. And of course, how did the guy get down to the lobby, on and on and on. And do you know that somebody got back to me today, and they said, at least they said, they were going to be sending my message over to their cold case unit. Now, whether they're just kissing my butt, I have no idea. But I was so motivated in looking at this yesterday that I emailed them and they got back to me today. And I appreciate that. I really appreciate that. So this is the part of this disappearance that seems unusual to me. And once again, I will say, even just overall, like I said, from a circumstances point of view, fairly rare. As I talked about in talking about the database this past Friday for the stats episode, and then with Dr. Telesco, she was a college graduate, and we know the odds of college graduates going missing is very, very low compared to the general population. Very, very low. Only 33 out of 300 some adults who we've featured on Unfound. That's it. That's it. And 38% of the American population have a college degree, whereas it's only 11% of Unfound's disappearances. It's a big difference. So we have to understand that. So you have to start looking for something along those lines that is unique. And maybe it's this, and it very well may be that the police looked into this and have checked this guy out and everything else, and they've decided no, but what are they, once again, how much faith do we put in police when it comes to disappearances? Not 100% faith. Now, the other part of this, as was written here, is shortly before 5 p.m., a witness noticed a silver/gray Volkswagen in that parking lot for that building. So it could leave you with the impression, was Katie still in the area? So once again, to remind you all of this, she's supposed to be having a meeting with her boss at 5, whereas there is some witness, I think he was a security guard, who says he saw her vehicle still in the parking lot at 5 p.m. in Portland. I don't know what to think about this. Now, is it for sure her vehicle? I don't think you can say that. My impression, being 23 years old and very much into cars at the time, and I still love cars, but I'm not as much into them as I was back then. A lot of silver/gray Volkswagen Golfs in the United States at the time. And I could easily believe that a car was there, but it wasn't hers. Once again, a little leftover from the sickness. So it very well could have been her car, but I would not put too much stock in that. And it very well could have just been somebody who thought he was trying to help out, and he wasn't. If you want to be suspicious, his name's out there. His name's John Davis. We don't have the name, the guy she met at 2 o'clock, but we have the name of this guy who was a witness. His name's John Davis. Rockford, I got your message saying, well, the name almost sounds made up. The funny thing is, I have a friend of mine who's a disc golfer. His name is John Davis, and he's a very good player, by the way. So that's kind of funny. But so I would not put a lot of stock in that. And we have to remember this is Portland, Oregon. If this were Kansas, then the odds of somebody driving a gray Volkswagen Golf, I think, would be a lot lower. But the Pacific Northwest, they're more, in my impression, they're more into foreign cars, into Subarus and things like that. I bet there are a lot of silver/gray Volkswagen Golfs being driven in Portland, Oregon at that time. I'm betting. Volkswagen Golf, very popular car at the time. So I wouldn't get too caught up in that. It's something, but I don't know what to make of that. Now, it said some people who saw her said she looked worried and preoccupied. Once again, this is not something that I usually take that seriously. All these people who saw her allegedly like this did not know her personally. And she very well could have been worried and preoccupied. Maybe she was, She was nervous because she had an upcoming sales call, and she was nervous about it, like anybody would be. And she was going through the materials, and maybe she was a little short on time. Doesn't mean anything. Zero means nothing. Now, I also read where they saw that she was making some phone calls. I don't think she had a cell phone at the time, maybe from a payphone. The problem is, I don't have any documentation on where those calls were going. I don't know. Certainly that would help in the analysis, but some people saw her on the payphones where those calls went. Nobody has an idea. Of course, if we were to find out that one of those calls was to somebody who she casually knew who lived in the Portland area, then that might catch our attention. On the other hand, if they were all business calls trying to maybe line things up for later in the week, then that's not going to catch my attention at all. So worried and preoccupied doesn't mean anything. Her making phone calls, it all depends on where the calls went. All right, so let's take a break here and see what everybody's saying. Rockford says, regarding the sales guy, if he was involved, he would have had to go unaccounted for at work that afternoon. I think it's more likely that the 2:15 timing is off. That's really, that's interesting. Rockford, I know you've known about this. Like you said, it's one of your pick cases. For the timing to be off, especially when, going back to those old articles, the timing was pretty well understood early on. That would be a big mistake. Certainly possible. That's not the first thing that would come to my mind, but okay. Lisa says she loves statistics. Hello, Jill. Rockford, at least they sent you the cold case unit and not the tax fraud unit, which was the original line of investigation. Yeah, I'll get into that. Portland police didn't exactly cover themselves in glory on this one. They certainly did not. Also, Carrie's lead singer, but he goes by Jonathan. Yeah, Korn's lead singer, Jonathan Davis. Right, Korn singer. Look at you. MT Volkswagen golf cars were very popular in Northwest Oregon at the time. I live in Portland, Northwest. All right, MT, so So I'm not off on that. So I don't think we can get too caught up in the idea that her car was still in the parking lot at 5 o'clock. Certainly possible, but no reason to automatically believe it. Rockford says, I'm interested in the time of the calls. I thought meeting was at 2 p.m. and lasted 15 minutes. If so, no way she was seen exiting elevator 2:15. But if the time is off, the calls and elevator are okay. Once again, it all depends on that guy and whether he got the timer. He may have nothing to do with this, but then we're really relying on him having the right time. So what else do I want to say here? Regarding what Rockford wrote about tax fraud, what he means there is that at the time, Katie had an older sister who was in trouble with the IRS for some tax reasons. And it was believed that Katie was going to have to testify. In fact, I think Katie was living with her sister at the time. Katie was going to have to testify against her sister. And she went missing before that. Of course, a lot of people were suspicious about that. The problem is that the sister ended up taking a plea anyway. And so Katie would not have had to have testified anyway. She took the sister took a guilty plea. I forget what everything was, but Katie wasn't going to have to testify anyway. But police did put a lot of stock in that. Of course, I wasn't doing missing persons podcast in 1993, but if they had consulted me back in 1993, or somebody police department would consult me now, I would tell them that's crazy. Even Ellen Sloan, going back to that disappearance from Montana, yes, she was in trouble with the IRS, but not even with that one do I think that she went missing because of a tax issue. So that's what, if you're reading the comments, Rockford is making here, that's what he means. And this all happened around the same time, but the odds of her going missing due to that, very, very remote, in my opinion. So let's now take a look at the car being dumped. So the car is dumped there. This wouldn't have been convenient. There were no houses around this area, very industrialized area. So if somebody actually abducted her, and let's just say, yes, the river's right there, took her body over to the water and threw it in, certainly possible. Are we thinking then here that there were two people involved? And that, they took the car there, dumped there, and then the other person, the person, the two man or women operation or whatever, got picked up and they drove away. I guess it's possible. Seems complicated, seems risky. But it's something that we have to think about. We also have to remember that the windows were rolled down. They were not up. If you remember, for the disappearance of, oh my gosh. I don't have it in front of me right now, but it was actually a Pennsylvania disappearance where the guy went missing and his car was found in Oakland, Pennsylvania, where the University of Pittsburgh is. When the car was found, his windows were also rolled down. And certainly in that disappearance, it's believed foul play occurred. I will tell you what I thought in that one. And the reason the windows were left down is maybe they were hoping the elements would cause, forensics to be destroyed, or there was a certain smell or something in the car that they wanted to get rid of before it was noticed. So you leave the windows down. Let's say that a guy wears a certain kind of cologne or something and doesn't want to be identified that way. So he leaves so the wind and air can all take it away. These are some ideas. It's just guessing. I don't have any real hard stats evidence to really be sure. These are just guesses. I don't think there's any thing statistically or odds related to that. But when her car was found 10 hours after she was last seen, the windows were rolled down. And like I said, her purse was in the car, but that book that she had was missing. For that, I would need to know more about what was in this book. I mean, is this some sort of sales? Could have been that. Was there some other sales representative from a competing company in the building? And, a guy saw she was in there and followed her out. And there was an argument and he kills her and then steals her leads or something. I mean, is this like Gary Glenn Ross all over again? Could be. It seems outrageously cutthroat to me, especially since she would not have been the first representative probably in this area. She's probably taken over somebody else. I'm guessing the person who had the job before her didn't go missing. So, what are we talking about there? But the book being missing, I don't, would it have had important information in it? Would it have had, I don't know. This is even well before computers were being overtly used. So we can't even talk about, passwords and usernames and account numbers and things. It very well could be just somebody came along, saw the windows down, saw the book in there, and just decided to take it. And the person had nothing to do with the disappearance. It's possible. Then why wasn't the purse taken? I don't know. I have no good insight into that at all. Now, of course, the car being by the river is a bad sign. So I at least have to entertain this idea. Did, for some reason, Katie lose her mind and go over there and jump into the river? It seems unlikely. Not impossible, certainly, I don't know. But if we're, for example, if we're going to think that Shane Fell went into the Mississippi River after a car wreck for seemingly no reason, except maybe he hit his head, didn't know what he was doing. And we know all sorts of weird stories about people going off and doing things that are inexplicable. Of course, for the Found episode, for all you YouTube and Patreon supporters, guy goes missing from New Hampshire, ends up in California, doesn't remember. Of course, I have big doubts about that, but still, a lot of people believe it. I think that what we generally think about people, that seems unlikely. The problem we have is that there are many, although they are not a very high percentage, but when you talk about, like, if we're just talking about the United States, you have 340 million people here. Once in a while, you're going to have people do things that are just inexplicable, not necessarily criminal, but just do things that are like, did that person really just do that? And when you have that many people, it's going to probably amount into the thousands of people who are doing that every day. Given what we know about Katie, it seems unlikely. On the other hand, first day on the job, all out by herself. Her sister is in this trial, and, Katie doesn't know what's going to happen to her sister, and she might have to testify. Could she have been pushed over the edge? I guess. It just doesn't seem very likely. But that, of course, that passport is still missing. We have to remember something. I think if she would have used her passport, everybody would have known that. Remember, your passport is not yours. That passport you have is, if you're an American citizen, is the property of the United States federal government. And so they keep pretty good records on that when you're going places. And, now, going for like the last maybe 15 years, you've needed a passport to get into Canada and come back from Canada. And that gets logged. It doesn't get stamped or anything like if you were to go to Europe, but it will be checked and it'll be entered and everything else. And seemingly her passport's never been used. In addition, it sounds unlikely that something like along the lines of, stealing somebody's ID could be possible here. So that's about, let's see what everybody says here. Rockford says, sister took a plea in July. Katie went missing in August. It's a non-issue. Yes. Lisa, only half of those listening have hit the like button on YouTube. Give our hero a like. Yeah. Thank you, Lisa, for keeping that up. Yeah. Hit the like button, share it, subscribe. Please do that as you are still, we got about 45 minutes left here. Thank you, Lisa, for reminding everybody. Brian says, why take the book and leave her purse with your personal information? Good question. Problem we have is that we have enough disappearances where we are to believe that women walked off and left their purses behind. So, like I said, it's something that has to be considered, and then especially since the river is right there. Brian says, almost seemed like it was staged. Could have been. Somebody could have been trying to make it look like she went into the river. What would get in the way of that was, if you really wanted to stage it, you would leave the book there. Because the book being missing then brings in something else. But the problem, like I said before, with the windows rolled down, anybody walking by could have been curious, looked in there, saw this book with whatever was in it, and taken it. It just seems it hasn't been found, and there's been no resolution to that. So it certainly could have been staged. The car could have been dumped there. Hello, Dee Dee. Good to see you tonight. But it could have been staged. And in fact, I have to say, Brian, I think that's probably, if I were able to do a poll of everybody who knows about this disappearance at least decently well, probably that's what people think, that it was staged, that somebody else put her car there and somebody abducted her and killed her and dumped her car there. Rockford, probably abduction, but possibly the pressure got to her. It's the boyfriend or it's a crazy coworker. I hope they either kept that car or took items that could have DNA. Not likely. Now, what I will say is kind of this does have shades of Julie Weflin. The big difference is, though, nobody believes that Julie Weflin's truck was staged. She was surely attacked. She was surely abducted, but coincidentally, also was it also up in the Pacific Northwest anyway? She was at work. She was a professional woman. Certainly doing a different job than Katie was doing. But as I think some of you know, I'm inclined to believe it was a co-workers of Julie's who did this. Of course, John Polos, the guest, thinks differently. I am inclined to think it was one of her coworkers who knew she was going to be there by herself. The problem is that would be hard for a coworker to think in this situation because she certainly would not be by herself. She was in downtown Portland. But could something have been arranged? Could something have said, all right, I have this meeting, and after that, I have 5, and I have some time to kill. Do you want to get together for lunch or something? And something happened? Absolutely. The problem I have is that, at least in a situation like this, you'd think that would have been fairly straightforward to figure out. In contrast to Julie Weflin, who's out there in the middle of nowhere, and is out there at, that to me would be more difficult to figure out. Whereas I think there would have had to have been some sort of phone call or something, arrangement. And, unless somebody just happened upon her, but I don't know. Just seems like a risky choice in contrast to Julie Weflin, who was going home. No. Rockford, closest case I can think of is Loy Evitz, married female, professional, missing during workday, but she parked in a garage. Husband was cleared. By the way, I have to look that up. Not familiar with. So where am I on this? What is my best guess? Outside of the guy who says she caused, and once again, who is this? Once again, we have this blue guy in the blue blazer with the dark hair, if we're to believe it. Never been seen in the building again, never identified. Certainly makes a good suspect. The problem is we can't believe that sighting. I think that if I were to find out that the guy who she met that day for that meeting was absolutely 100% cleared, and that he was in his office for the rest of the day and everything. I know this is going to sound so bizarre, but I'm just going to think that Katie did this to herself. I know. Bizarre. I know. The problem I have, like I've already stated, from the circumstances point of view, this is very, very rare. And this is not an environment where some guy would just be cruising around looking to swipe up some woman from the street. No predator is going to do that because there's too many people around and everything else. Predators, they work at night. They go into areas that are what we would call more target-rich atmospheres. I mean, what are we talking about? If this were something that predators of women did, we would have women going missing midday in major cities all over the United States. That's not happening. Although a lot of women do get attacked and raped at night in parking garages, going jogging, riding their bike out in the middle of nowhere. Certainly those things do happen. But midday in an industrialized city, walking from the building to her car or whatever, it just seems so unlikely. In addition, once again, unless somebody she knew came along and just timed it all just right or something. Would also help to know where she was, what was her agenda. that whole day. That would, where was she? And I know there is some documentation, but a step-by-step progression on all of this. And we can't forget it was her first day being alone. It very well could be somebody was waiting for that time. It just, once again, all seems very unlikely to me. And the problem I have is I just know of too many disappearances where everybody's so convinced it was foul play, and then it doesn't end up being that way. So that's where I am. That is Katie Eggleston. Certainly there's other information out there you want to check out. It's not an easy one. I like these ones. I don't like the disappearance themselves, but for me, wanting to be challenged, this is a really good one. This is one of those when we start talking about the Unfound database. The Unfound database, I think, eventually is going to be able to hone our insights into a disappearance like this much better than any of us can do right now. The only thing I can say once again right now is professional woman doesn't have a very good chance of getting abducted in daytime, 2:15 or 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon in a city. Now, if she were a prostitute and she was in a shady part of town and she was walking up to every guy who stopped at the red light, that's different. Certainly different. Lisa says, can't wait to see the database. Well, I now have permission to share it now, Lisa. And some people are already looking at it, kind of testing it and working with it. Still looking to work out some of the kinks, but it's coming, Lisa. Thank you. So that's Katie Eggleston. Her family, her parents who are deceased, surely thought that she was abducted, surely thought the car was staged, surely thought that she was murdered, surely thought that somebody attacked her right there in the afternoon. Could be convinced that this guy who had this blue blazer, who's never been identified, could have done it. With the information I know right now, I'm certainly not leaning that way. But as we know with Unfound's disappearances, you find out a lot more. And hopefully I will get to talk to one of her family members one of these days, and maybe some of these things, can be, fleshed out. Certainly would like to hear how the ex-boyfriend reacted to all of this. If maybe he had an alibi, what if one of his siblings took it personally? What if his father took it personally? Like maybe we suspect, like with Susie Lau. Could have happened. Rockford, thanks for covering it. It's a stumper for sure. Needs more publicity. I'll do what I can, Rockford. Katie Eggleston. Glad I took a look at that one. And I urge all of you to go find out more about it yourselves. Let's move on to this UPS flight, flight 2976 that crashed. And I say this in the simplest way possible, quite spectacularly, last Tuesday evening, taking off from Louisville. I'm sure most of you have seen the video. It's some of the most, it's the same best and worst plane crash video you're ever going to see. I would put it right up there or down there with the videos from September 11th and seeing the videos crashing into the World Trade Centers, right there before our eyes. And of course, 25 years later, of course, the quality of the video is much better. And some of those cameras were really, really close to where it crashed. Here's what you need to know. All right. I know, and you have to keep in mind whatever you've been looking at with TV, they get a lot of people on there who really don't know what they're talking about. Just so you know. First of all, you need to understand, as far as that type of airplane, the MD-11, not used a lot in the world for passengers. Most MD-11s They were used for passengers at one time, but given that jets have gotten more efficient and you can fly more efficiently with 2 engines, most MD-11s to these days are used for cargo, like UPS, FedEx, DHL, other companies around the world. Something for you to understand. So if you're thinking about going on a trip, I don't think you have to worry these days about flying on an MD-11, although there very well may be some carriers in the world that are using them. But in the United States, I don't think any passenger airlines are using them. In fact, I was looking this up, the only MD-11 that has ever crashed with people on it, like with a passenger plane, was the Swiss Air flight from many years ago that went down there up past Long Island, Newfoundland, up in that area. And it wasn't even necessarily due to the plane. It was due to the entertainment system on the plane that caught fire and eventually disintegrated the plane. Everybody got killed. That is the only passenger plane that's really crashed. All the other MD-11 accidents have been cargo planes with FedEx and now with UPS. Something to understand. But right now, at least in the United States, MD-11s are being grounded anyway with UPS and FedEx and other companies. All of them are grounded right now. I think I read where MD-11s make up 11% of UPS's fleet. Of course, UPS has a huge fleet of cargo airlines, of jets. MD-11s make up 11%, and they are all grounded for now. They did that by choice, not because they were forced to do that. What you also may have seen out there is that this crash could be similar to an American Airlines crash from 1979 in Chicago, one of the most famous airline crash photos of all time. You will see the plane sideways and the left engine is missing, very much like how this MD-11 lost its left engine. Took off from Chicago O'Hare. As it was taking off, the wing fell off. The pilots didn't realize it. Procedures and other things, engineering, were different at the time, and the plane just started slowly banking, and it got to this, and everybody on the plane got killed, and some people on the ground got killed. It did reach, though, a higher altitude than this UPS flight did. But what I would urge you is to not think they are similar just because they look similar. Now, what happened with the American Airlines flight was that American Airlines mechanics were taking shortcuts as far as maintenance on the engines, and the way they were taking the engines off the plane was not what the manufacturer of those jets recommended. And in one of the times they were putting the engine back on, they damaged something in the wing, and eventually that part let go, and that's why that engine fell off that jet in 1979. I am fairly sure, of course, you're never going to be 100% sure, that that is not going to be the cause of this crash. To believe that UPS or any company today was taking the shortcut that American Airlines was taking back in 1979 would be the most outrageous story I've ever heard regarding jets. Because that crash is so well known, and everybody that got in trouble for it and everything else, there's no way that UPS would be taking that shortcut today. Even though the crashes look similar. In fact, this similar type of plane, both 3-engine planes and both left engines coming off the jets. But don't be fooled by that. What this seems to be more like is coincidentally also an American Airlines flight from back in 2017. And what happened there was it a Boeing 767? So it's just 2 engines. It was in the process of going down the runway. The engine blew up. The left engine, was it the right? It was I think it was the right engine on that plane. It blew up, but because the plane was not that far down the runway, it was able to stop and everybody was able to get off the plane safely. but the jet was a total loss because of the fire that was involved. Now you may be asking, well, what happened on that flight? Well, the engine blew up. Well, we hear a lot these days. We had that, if some of you remember, there was a Southwest flight from some years ago where one of the engines exploded in flight. And of course, luckily, the pilots were able to land the plane and only one person got killed. And what happened was a piece of the engine at the front of the engine. So, when you're looking at a jet and you're looking at the turbine spin, what happened is one of those pieces, those blades came apart, flew into the plane and hit one of the passengers, killed her. But the plane, they were able to land the plane. The difference with this American Airlines flight from just a few years ago was not a part at the front of the plane, of the engine. It was actually one of the rotating parts at the back of the engine. And what they have shown is that when you have a piece at the front of the engine that blows up, you don't get much of a fire or anything, because that's not where the fuel is being ignited. But when a part at the back of the engine goes, the fire is like nothing that you have ever seen. And so right now, that is why people in the know are thinking that this UPS flight is more like this American Airlines flight from like 2017 or something, and not the one from 1979, even though that other one looks more similar. Now, the issue is this, though, and this is not to scare any of you, but I'm just stating facts. This would then not be an issue with the jet, the MD-11. By the way, it's McDonnell Douglas, but McDonnell Douglas got bought out by Boeing, so it's actually a Boeing plane now. What I'm saying here is it's not necessarily an issue with the jet, the model. It's actually an issue with the engine. And the problem is that engine is used in all types of different jets. Including jets that are up there in the sky right now. The jet engine that was on that MD-11 is a very common type of engine that's used in all types of different planes. So grounding the MD-11s might not be the safety measure that everybody thinks. Not to scare any of you. Not trying to scare any of you. Now, what they determined with this flight from a few years ago, where the back of the engine blew up but everybody lived, is that it was not a maintenance issue, but it was a problem from when the jet was made, the engine was made. And there was a little flaw in one of these discs that could not be seen through microscopic and x-rays and everything they do to check out these engines. And over time, that crack gets a little bigger until, of course, it breaks. And in fact, when you hear about engines blowing up, fan blades flying off of jet engines, that's usually what we're talking about, is that there was some small little crack that's not seen by maintenance. And they do a lot of that. They check for this stuff. They aren't perfect. And then one of these blades, the issue is a lot of times, I know this is going to sound crazy, but jets, engines falling off of planes, not that unusual. You would be amazed how many jet engines have fallen off of planes and the plane still landed with no casualties. It's happened quite a bit. It's happened quite a bit. The problem you have with, and I will even go on to say this, although even if this UPS flight had been at 35,000 feet, I think this would have still been a crash. Because if it is a situation where the back of this engine blew up and this fire is created, there's nothing that's going to save it. The fire is going to burn, and fire on a plane is the worst. That's the worst thing that can happen. Fire on a plane at altitude. So even if this had happened at 35,000 feet, the way it seems this engine might have blown up, it still would have been a disaster. The difference is probably nobody would have gotten killed on the ground, as happened last week. Whereas there are many stories of jet engines blowing up at altitude and the jets landing just fine, like I said, the Southwest flight, but actually engines coming off planes, like blowing off. And actually, they're made to do that. You know, if an engine explodes, they are made to detach from the aircraft because they're more dangerous being attached to the aircraft than them flying away. These jets are made so they can fly on 2 engines or 1 engine and land safely. But when you're talking about the situation that this flight was in, right at the point where it was leaving the ground, it's just like the worst case scenario. It's just, you can see pilots talking about this on other YouTube channels. It's just no hope. As soon as that happened, there was nothing that could be done by anybody to save anybody's life. Zero. But like I said, if it had happened at 35,000 feet, the jet still would have come apart, but just the people on the plane would have been killed. Instead, because it happened where it did, of course, a lot of people in that, that area right there, 12, 14 people on the ground probably have been killed as well. But there was nothing the pilots could have done. It's just bad. Now, could be something regarding this is that at the point, it seems like right when the plane was, nose was going up is when this happened. And I've seen on a video on this that something to think about. It's all physics. But when a plane raises up like that, the forces on the engines change. So we know the turbine, is spinning like this, straight ahead. The plane's going straight ahead. It's trying to get up to whatever, 150 miles an hour, 180 miles an hour, whatever it needs to take off. And the jet, and the jet is pointed right into, the direction that it's going. Well, as soon as the pilot pulls back on the controls and moves the tail and the plane starts to take off, the physics on the jet, on the engines change. It's called gyroscopic progression. The force of the force on the engines cause the engines to want to turn. Like I said, you can look this up. Gyroscopic progression. So even though the engine is still pointed wherever the jet is going, there are forces on the engine that are trying to twist it to the side. Usually in the clockwise, whatever way the engine's spinning. And usually if you're looking at a jet engine, it's going to want to, the left engine is turning toward, from the top, the part is going toward the fuselage. And so that's why they're saying when that happens, that's why this jet, that even though engine was on the left side of the jet on the runway, it actually ended up on the right side of the runway, probably because when it let go, the gyroscopic progression threw it that direction. It's not like the engine would just fall off the jet or fly up over the back straight. It would actually go to the side. And that's what they're also saying. Probably when it did that, the big engine on the back in the middle ingested stuff. And that's why that engine probably wasn't at full power either. So there's that. And so what happens is when you get that gyroscopic progression, there is torque there, and the pylon that holds the engine to the wing has to be strong enough to stop that. Well, if there was an explosion at the back of the engine, that gyroscopic progression would be even stronger, because then the engine is out of balance. It's not spinning real tight around its center of mass. Suddenly it's spinning like this. If you're watching the or spinning like a top that it's losing its steam. You spin a top and it's really tight spin, but as it gets slower, it starts to wobble. That's what would happen with an engine that something is blown out of it. It would start to wobble, and the pylon just isn't strong enough to hold it, and that's why the engine goes off. And it's built to do that, but it was just seemingly at the worst time it could happen. Lisa's asking, who is your number one fan? Lisa, you may be my number one fan. When my mother was alive, she was my number one fan. Brian says, taking shortcuts on maintenance on an aircraft is recipe for disaster. You're right, Brian. I'm not thinking that happened here with UPS, though. Certainly something was missed. I would say I will go as far as to say we might find out that something was missed. But I'm going to be very surprised if there was any shortcut taking or anything else that caused this, whether in the manufacturing process or in the mechanics taking care of the plane. I will be very, very surprised. Very surprised. So that is my insight on this crash. I'm going to continue to follow it. My prediction at this point on November 10th at 10:40 p.m. Eastern time on November 10th, 2025 right now, my prediction is that we have not seen the end of possible groundings of certain planes with that engine on it. That would not surprise me at all. That the FAA will call for all airlines flying in the United States, at least, that have that particular kind of engine on their jets, that they're going to have to get the once over, no matter when the last maintenance was done on that engine. Because what they found going back to 1979, because American Airlines had been doing that with, shortcut maintenance on several of their planes, what they discovered is there were many planes that had they not been checked, they would have had the same thing happen that one plane had with the engine dropping off because they were taking shortcuts. Here, I think that we're talking about a microscopic flaw that could be in some of these engines, and they're just going to need a much, much deeper go over than maybe they get usually. So be looking for maybe more groundings of any jets with that type of engine. So going beyond the model, this MD-11 with 3 engines, but to 767s, 757s, maybe Airbus uses that engine as well. I don't know. So that's flight, what was it? Flight 2976 UPS. Very sad. I mean, the videos, the guy in that truck and the plane crashes right in front of him. And then you see the plane coming from the left and it clips those, clips the electric lines, and everybody's running out of that building. I just can't imagine it. I mean, I see jets fly over my building headed to Tampa or St. Pete Airport all the time. As much as I watch jets, I cannot imagine sitting out on my balcony one day and seeing one of these jets like crash into the beach out here or something. I think I would be traumatized for life. I think I would be. It would be crazy. So that's flight 2976 UPS. If you're planning to fly, once again, do not be afraid. But just be aware. Be aware. Moving on, I want to talk about Michael Vaughn, this little boy who went missing. This is from Fruitland, Idaho. This is a disappearance that I talked about for an Unfound now, like 4 years ago when he went, or no, he went missing late 2022. All right, so it's like 3 years ago. According to a recent news release, suspects are being charged with the disappearance and murder of Michael Vaughn. In late 22, police began digging in the backyard. No, so this was 2021. Police began digging in the backyard of a residence blocks from Michael Vaughn's home in Fruitland that belonged to Stacy and Sarah Wandra, Stacy being a guy. A leaked video shows Stacy directing police via FaceTime to where he says he saw Sarah burying Michael's body. Fruitland Police Chief J.D. Huff announced no remains were found, but it seemed Michael's body may have been buried there before being moved. The Fruitland Police named Stacy and Sarah as suspects, and a probable cause affidavit was forwarded to the Piatt County Prosecutor's Office. Earlier this year marked 4 years since Michael disappeared, so I was right, summer 2021. From his Fruitland home, at the time of his disappearance, Michael was 5 years old, 3 feet 7 inches tall, and weighed 50 pounds. Very sad. And to go deeper into this, what happened was it his parents or his mother and her boyfriend? They had left Michael with an older family member, an older guy. Was it his grandfather or uncle or somebody? And I guess that the guy just thought Michael was somewhere in the house playing around. They come back. Michael's gone, never to be seen again. And I did do a map video, I think, as part of that coverage over 4 years ago. And of course, it would be perfectly natural. Is this actually what happened? Did they really drop Michael off there? Was this some conspiracy? Did something else happen to Michael and they're all covering it up? Or did the guy who was watching him do something to him? A lot of different possibilities. You know, the problem I have is that these people were looked at before, like it says in 2022, and nothing went anywhere. And I think I talked about it in an Unfound Live at the time, and I'm not sure exactly what I said, but I'm guessing my insight was along the lines of, these people just sound crazy to me. They very well could have done something to Michael, and certainly if they live in the area, I guess anything's possible. But they just seem crazy. And I realize there are child killers out there, but what we're saying is this boy's just walking down the street and these people who were the neighbors or whatever just decided to kill him. You know, did they hit him with, did they hit him with a car? And maybe because they have records for drugs or something, they're like, oh man, we're going to get in trouble. So I'm more along the lines to think something like that than this is just an outright murder. They took this little kid in and killed him just cold blooded. This seems more to me like some accident that they tried to cover up, if they even had anything to do with it. And I know that, who am I to question the police there? Well, you know what? They thought they had something back in 2022 and that went nowhere. Why should I take them any more seriously here in 2025? Especially when they say they went back to that spot and they dug it up and nothing was there. What I don't know is how often are murdered people, murdered humans buried and then dug up and put somewhere else. Now, one that should come to mind, that should be in all of your minds, is Janelle Matthews. I think a lot of people forget she was found buried outside of Greeley, Colorado. But guess what? Her lower legs have still never been found. So it seems her body was put somewhere else for a while, in which I guess her lower legs came off the body. I think a lot of people forget that. When they found Janelle, they found, of course, a bullet hole in her head, but her lower legs, like I guess from the knees down, not there, even though she was buried. So I guess it could have happened with her, but I'm still not convinced it's that common. And also, I can't figure out, they went through all the trouble of burying this kid and then thought that was a bad idea and took him somewhere else. Seems like a lot of work. So I still have my doubts about all this. Being it seems like they're, Stacy and Sarah, their last name Wondra, Wondra, so seems so intent on rolling over on each other. I saw her bury in the back. Well, then how did she or he take that body out there without you seeing it? And where is the body now? It just seems like these people can tell you everything but what we really want to know. And you know how I feel about things like that. I start to doubt whether these people are telling the truth at all. How many times does that happen? A lot of times it's not the truth at all. So I don't know what to think. I have a responsibility to keep my eyes on it because it is one of Unfound's disappearances, even though it was not on the podcast. I guess at this point I could do that if I wanted to reach out to Michael's family. I guess I could do that. But I still have my doubts. Hello, Ms. Tay. How are you tonight? Hey, y'all. Hello to you. So what else? I got about 9 minutes left. What else do I want to discuss? The Edmund Fitzgerald. 50th year anniversary today of its sinking. And I think what's interesting for us to remember about this, and we can kind of compare this to the Pickering 6 disappearance, also happening on one of the Great Lakes, is none of the bodies of the men, I think there were 20 some of them, none of the bodies of the men of the Edmund Fitzgerald has ever come to the surface. Seemingly, their bodies, and being how cold those lakes are at the bottom, they very well may be somewhat fairly well preserved, except for the fish that come along. They're all still down there. And so when we think about the Pickering 6 and those 6 young men who have never been found, I think it helps to remember that. Now, something I didn't know until just a couple days ago, which I found fascinating, is that was 50 years ago, the Edmund Fitzgerald, of course, made into a well-known song. I think everybody at this point has heard that song. Fantastic song, Gordon Lightfoot. Sorry I never got to see him. My friend Dave got to see him before Gordon died a few years ago. Dave was happy that he went, but he said that Gordon was on his last leg, maybe even literally. But can you believe that the Edmund Fitzgerald was the last commercial ship to sink on the Great Lakes? Up until that point, it was a fairly regular occurrence. But since that Edmund Fitzgerald sinking, the last commercial big ship to sink on the Great Lakes. That is something. Why it is? Well, very well may be because the Edmund Fitzgerald got so much attention that everybody said, you know what, man, we got to start doing better. We got to start doing better with the safety of these ships on the Great Lakes. And if you don't know, what is, Dee sent you over here. All right, Miss Tay. That I'm happy that Dee did that. And we're about done here, but thanks for tuning in anyway. If you don't know, the Edmund Fitzgerald, big cargo ship, and went down in a really, really bad storm. Some different theories on why this happened. The one that seems most convincing to me is that, those big ships, they have these cargo holds, and all of these holds have doors on the deck. And if any of those were to come loose for whatever, either due to improper shutting of them, and you should know they're flat, they're not like a door you walk through. They're doors that sit, like your bed, horizontally, and they open up like that. But if any of them aren't sealed, or they become damaged, or, some whatever corrosion over time or whatever else, if any of those come open in a storm and the water is washing over, as it's going through these waves, the water going into the holds, because one of these doors or a couple doors are open, can actually sink the ship. And that seems to be a very popular theory. There's also another theory that there might have been some uncharted shallow spot right around where the Edmund Fitzgerald was. It might have hit it when it was in one of the troughs of these huge waves that were occurring at the time. Maybe it could be a combination of both. But the water washing into the hold of the Edmonds Trail, so that as it's going along, it's taking on more. It's sinking a different way than the Titanic. Of course, Titanic had a big gash on the side. That's how the water got in. Well, it doesn't matter whether the water's coming in the side or in through the top. It's not supposed to be there, and that can bring a ship down. So that's the Edmund Fitzgerald 50 years ago today. Love that song. Very sad what happened there. Very, very sad. What else do I want to mention? Being that Lisa brought it up earlier in the comments tonight. Lisa, who is in the chat, is actually in the process of making a Wikipedia page for me and Unfound. I don't know if it's going to stick. I know the perception is anybody with anything can be put on Wikipedia. I will tell you that that's not the case. But Lisa has collected some information on myself and citing, you have to cite links and all that stuff to do it the right way so it stays on there. So she's collected some information to me in regards to, of course, me, testifying in the Pankey trial twice and then James L. Matthews trial twice and some other things. So we'll see if it all works out. There's like I think a review period and all these things. Would be kind of cool to have my own Wikipedia page, I guess. Certainly will help for credibility purposes. Certainly will help, reaching out to people. I could say, hey, go check my Wikipedia page out there. And I really don't even know how many true crime podcasters have their own Wikipedia pages. I know Serial has it. I really don't know. But, it's like one of those things. Well, if my friends could see me now. So we'll see if that all goes through. I think given my history in the trials and speaking at schools and being on TV at least 4 or 5 times over the last few years, I think that should be enough as long as all of it can be cited and, cited CITED. I think, it will probably work out, but maybe not. Maybe not. I will keep you posted, but if it sticks, I think we'll know that in a few weeks. If it sticks, of course, I will direct all of you to it, and I will continue to work hard to add more and more information to it that has everything to do with the work I'm doing here at Unfound. Lisa says, yay. Yeah, as a very impressive resume. Thanks. Nephew Charlie say that would be cool. Yeah, that would. It would be cool to have an uncle's on Wikipedia because, Brian and Michael, I don't know if they're ever going to make it on Wikipedia, Charlie. So one of us has to do that. So I think that's Dr. T show is spectacular on Thursday night. I'm just sorry that I didn't feel a little bit. I think I did fine, but I just wish I would have felt a little better at that time doing it, but I think it still came out okay. And the stats episode was due to be done. As far as this Friday, I'm still not sure what it's going to be. I was supposed to do an interview this past weekend, believe it or not, with another police officer regarding a disappearance in the state of Georgia, but he had to go out on a warrant call for something at the time that we had arranged to talk. So, of course, that took precedence. So I'm still scrambling for something in Florida for Friday. Not sure what it's going to be right now. And it also hasn't helped that, of course, I went on a trip a week and a half ago, and it hasn't helped that I felt sick. But I am going to have, I'm thinking what's going to be a very interesting call about a new disappearance tomorrow. Very excited about that. And certainly I've been talking to some people, just haven't made any official interviews happen. but it's not because I haven't been trying, and certainly I have been talking to people. We'll just have to see. So Rockford says it will look nice next to your IMDb page. And yes, if everybody doesn't know, I am also on the Internet Movie Database with my picture there is from about 2007. Maybe I should update that. Maybe. I don't know if I even have access to do that. I did that. I put that all together myself many, many years ago when I lived in Las Vegas. That's how long ago that was. But if you ever wondered what I looked like in about 2006, 2007, go to my IMDb page. So there's that. It's 11 o'clock. I'm done. Going to try to get something done for Friday that'll be interesting and informative for all of you. So I got a few days to work on that. Lisa, love you, Ed. Thanks so much. Well, thank you, Lisa, for putting in the work on Wikipedia. And you should know, everybody should know, Lisa brought it up to me. I did not recruit her to do that. She came to me with that idea. That's all I got. Thank you so much for giving me some of your Monday night. I hope you found the information about Katie Eggleston flight, the UPS flight, Michael Vaughn, everything I discussed, my singing and everything else. I hope you all find it interesting and enjoyable tonight. And maybe you'll hear me on Friday. Something will happen on Friday. I'm just not sure what. Keep your heads on swivels. Do not end up on my podcast. Charlie, say hi to your sons for me. Good night.